Didn't see you there. Welcome to Morgan's Nature Notebook. Today we're in Cache Creek. We're going to go for a walk, look for some animals, some native plants, and just kind of find out where Cache Creek comes from.
Well, the headwaters of Cache Creek begin way up at over 9,000 feet on the slopes of Cache Peak. From there, it flows over 8 miles, passing smaller drainages like Noker Mine Draw, Gin Pole Draw, and Salt Lake Draw. Shortly after entering the town, it disappears. It gets split into 3 subterranean tubes, one to the National Elk Refuge, one along its original path through Mike Yokel Park, and one that flows into Flat Creek in Karns Meadow. Why is it underground? Well, in 1974 there was a big flood. The town of Jackson put it there to avoid future floods. Cache Creek is one of my favorite places to hike and explore in Jackson. Today we're starting our hike at the trailhead and we're going to check out some wildflowers, trees, and signs of wildlife. There's so much cool stuff out here in Cache Creek. We're walking around and there's not a ton of leaves out yet, but if you just look closely, there's some tiny stuff that's really colorful. Like I looked over here and there's this violet, and instead of being blue or purple or violet, it's actually yellow. So I've got this cool lens here. It's called a macro lens that magnifies things by 10. I'm gonna try to get some cool footy. Got it. You know what's really cool about this? Is there's actually these lines inside the violet, and maybe we'll try to show you the picture, but they act as guides or almost landing strips for things like bees and other pollinators, so that they go right to the center of the flower and pollinate it better. The other cool part is what we see as lines are actually glowing in ultraviolet light, which is the type of light that pollinators like bees and other insects use to hone in on flowers, which is pretty cool. A little bit further up the trail, and there's something else that you can look out for the next time you're in Cache Creek or on another Forest Service trail. Right here, this is a Saskatoon serviceberry.
Huh?
This is a Saskatoon serviceberry. In addition to being a really fun word to say, Saskatoon, you can try saying that if you want. It's really good wildlife food. And so this is something that deer and elk and moose love to chew on. And something you can look out for, not just for Saskatoon serviceberry, but all other sorts of plants, is something I'm gonna call browse. And so if you look at the tips, you can see there's this kind of jagged end. And to me, this means that a moose, an elk, or a deer came through and chomped on it and got some good nutrition. And you might say, well, how do you know it wasn't a human that was just doing some landscaping in the forest? And on the same plant, we can look down here, and this is typically what it looks like when we humans cut stuff. And I'm guessing since this is on the side of the road that someone came through here with loppers and cut this back. And so we have these really flat edges where the humans cut it, and then these kind of jagged, ripped edges. And every single one of these tips, every single one of them is eaten. To me, that says animals really like this type of plant, and they feel safe eating and feeding in Cache Creek. Quick tip. You can remember what kind of tree it is by touching it. In this case, this is a fir tree, or a Doug fir tree, because when I touch it and kind of pull, don't pull too hard, it's nice and soft, it's not too prickly, doesn't hurt at all. You might even say it's friendly, in which case we could say it's a friendly fir, or a friendly Douglas fir. Another cool thing about Doug fir, or Douglas fir, or Dougie fir, or Pseudotsuga menzii, whatever you want to call them, you know they're friendly, but you can also look at their cones that are usually all over the ground right next to them. In which case, they have this really cool feature, and my friend Phoebe calls it a mouse tail. And can you see that? you zoom in and focus on that, you can kind of see it's like a little mouse butt with a little mouse tail hanging down. There's not another tree out here in Cache Creek that makes a cone like this. So you pay attention to just little things like cones, you can figure out what kind of tree you're looking at. Yeah, so we were talking about that friendly fir. Ouch, these are not friendly. This right here is a blue spruce. And the way we know, in addition to it being spiky, is if you could take a needle off and look at it under a microscope or just with your eye, or if you just rolled it between your fingers, it's not so flat, it's actually square shaped. So square spruce, spiky spruce, whatever you want. Flat fir, friendly fir, spiky spruce, square spruce. So something else that's super cool in the Cache Creek drainage and other drainages are these things called springs. You probably heard of a spring or spring water that comes in a plastic bottle, but this is the real deal right here. Spring is just basically where water, groundwater, just comes out of the side of a mountain. And I can just look at this and see the different moss, and we've got some sedges and other vegetation growing here. In addition to the fact that I just look right here and it looks like there's a stream coming out of a tree. And I know streams don't come out of trees usually. So this is a spring, pretty cool. Well, thanks everybody for coming along on this tour of Cache Creek on the first installment of Morgan's Nature Notebook. We saw some pretty cool stuff up Cache Creek, some good animals, some good plants, and it's just gonna keep changing. Every day is new, always see something different. So next time you're out, keep your eyes peeled and look for the little stuff. And if you don't know what it is, get curious about it. Ask a friend what it is. Check on the internet what it is. But stay curious and look for that little stuff. We talked a little bit about where all this water comes from, but I'm a little bit curious about where it ends up. And so to answer that question, we're going to drive down the road a little bit and look where Cache Creek ends up. Talk to our friend Carlin, who's a water expert. He's going to give us some fun facts. Hey friends, well, we made it down here to Karns Meadow, which is where Cache Creek flows into Flat Creek. And I'm looking around for my friend and coworker Carlin Gerard, who's the water resources specialist at Teton Conservation District, hoping he can answer some of those questions we came up with on our tour up Cache Creek. Wonder where he is. Hey Carlin.
Hey Morgan.
How you doing?
Great, thanks.
We just went on a tour up Cache Creek and we saw some really cool stuff. One of the first things we saw was a spring. Water was just coming out of the ground. And we were wondering, what's a spring and how many springs do you think there are up in the Cache Creek watershed?
Wow. Well, Morgan, good question. Spring is where groundwater becomes surface water. So all around us, the soils are storing water. And when elevationally that groundwater intersects the surface, it boils up as a spring. And in the upper Cache Creek watershed, there's many, many springs.
We looked at some plants, some flowers that are coming up, saw some animals up there, saw some animal sign and where they eat the plants. I'm wondering, as a water expert, what kind of stuff is actually living in the water? Is it just fish or is there other stuff too?
Boy, streams are incredibly diverse environments. In a square meter of stream bed, 3 feet by 3 feet, you could expect to find maybe 30 different species of aquatic insect, macroinvertebrates. We have tons that live in these systems, as well as a whole host of other different types of organisms. Very, very diverse environments.
So another thing that I kind of feel like is a little bit mysterious, we went, I don't know, probably about 2 miles from the trailhead, and then we get back to the car, and I'm following Cache Creek, and we just see it disappear into a concrete hole in the ground. And I guess that's kind of a mystery. It's like, if we're here downstream of where Cache Creek comes into Flat Creek, where's it go? What's it all about?
Great question, Morgan. I also think that where Cache Creek goes is one of the most interesting things about it. The town of Jackson was built at the confluence of two streams, Flat Creek and Cache Creek. One of them doesn't flow as a stream anymore. It flows in a stormwater sewer. Flood concerns in the 70s required that the town of Jackson pretty much submerge the stream below the surface. So the reason why you can't see it is because it enters a series of tubes that run below streets and discharges at a couple points within Flat Creek and also on the National Elk Refuge as irrigation water.
So I'm a little curious. I think I have an idea, but what exactly is stormwater?
Well, stormwater is the water that runs off of impervious surfaces, so surfaces that don't drain in a place like Jackson off of the concrete or buildings, and carries with it the pollutants from the developed areas. And in order for that water to not cause localized flooding concerns all over, you need to create some sort of a drainage mechanism to let that water move. So in the town of Jackson, we have a sewer system. The water flows into grates and goes beneath the road in a separated sewer system from our wastewater, which allows the stormwater to then just be treated, hopefully, and then discharged into Flat Creek or Cache Creek.
That's awesome information to know. Thank you, Carlin. Really appreciate you coming out and helping us.
Thanks for coming along on this first installment of Morgan's Nature Notebook. Hope to see you soon.
That's about all I have to say about that.